In January of 2026, we set out on an expedition to the ancient Maya city of Piedras Negras, deep in the Guatemalan rainforest. Our objective was not simply to document its jungle-covered ruins. We were searching for something far more elusive, evidence of a vast and largely unexplored cave system that, if confirmed, could prove to be among the largest and deepest in Mesoamerica. Both ancient traditions and modern accounts hint at something extraordinary potentially concealed beneath the limestone hills overlooking this remote stretch of the Usumacinta River. They speak of a hidden subterranean complex, an ancient hall of records, attributed to a civilization far older than the Maya themselves, said to preserve knowledge from a remote and possibly forgotten epoch. Over the course of 2 full days, we will explore one of the greatest royal capitals of the Maya world, in search of answers. As we cut our way through the dense vegetation, massive stone pyramids begin to emerge from beneath the canopy. Beneath the visible temples lie vast megalithic foundations that may predate the city's apogee during the classic Maya period. Carved monuments lie scattered across the forest floor, stelae covered in intricate leaves, eroded yet still legible after more than a millennium. These inscriptions are not merely decorative, they are historical records, names of kings, dynastic events, accounts of war and ritual, texts that may ultimately force us to reconsider how and when Maya civilization first emerged. In the oldest sector of the site, we begin to detect something even more intriguing, a deliberate pattern in the orientation of its earliest structures. Walls, platforms, and sightlines appear to align not with the sun alone, but with specific stars and constellations, possibly including Orion, suggesting a sophisticated system of celestial observation embedded in the city's foundational design. If these alignments are intentional, they may connect to one of the most significant days in Mesoamerican chronology, 3114 BC, the mythic starting point of the Maya long count calendar. As we search for evidence of hidden caves and tunnels beneath the site's massive acropolis, subtle anomalies begin to emerge. Collapsed vaults, sealed corridors, filled-in subterranean cavities from which cold air still rises, breathing from unseen depths below. These features may represent the remnants of deliberately blocked tunnels, subterranean passages that once linked the site's major pyramids underground. All of them appear to converge toward a vast dry cenote, carved deep into the limestone bedrock, possibly one of the largest and deepest in Mesoamerica. If so, this immense natural shaft may hold the key to the city's ancient name, Yoquiba, the Great Entrance. An entrance not merely to Piedras Negras' ancient kingdom, but to the underworld itself. Join us on this expedition into one of the most remote and mysterious Maya sites ever discovered in the Guatemalan jungle. Together, we will trace the rise and fall of one of the greatest cities of ancient Mesoamerica, through its kings, inscriptions, and sacred architecture. All while searching for evidence of a legendary hall of records deep beneath the site, said to preserve the knowledge of a lost civilization long predating the Maya themselves. Piedras Negras rises above the middle course of the Usumacinta River, the great waterway that for centuries has divided and connected the lands of Mexico and Guatemala. At its apogee between 450 and 810 CE, Piedras Negras stood as one of the largest and most powerful Maya cities in the Usumacinta Basin, with a population that may have exceeded 50,000 inhabitants. It rivaled major regional capitals such as Palenque and Yaxchilán, competing for political dominance along this strategic river corridor. The ruins were first documented in 1895 by the Austrian explorer Theobald Mahler, who carried out the earliest excavations at the site between 1895 and 1899, producing invaluable photographic records of monuments that were already about to disappear. Between 1931 and 1939, the University of Pennsylvania Museum conducted 8 excavation seasons under the direction of John Alden Mason and Linton Satterthwaite, mapping and restoring many of the principal structures within the ceremonial core. In the 1960s, Piedras Negras played a pivotal role in one of the most important breakthroughs in Maya studies. The epigraphist Tatiana Proskuriakov demonstrated that the site's carved stelae and monuments recorded dynastic history, births, accessions, wars, and deaths, rather than merely calendrical or astronomical data. Her insight transformed our understanding of Maya writing. Her reconstructions of the city remain among the most evocative ever produced, capturing the architectural splendor of Piedras Negras at its height. Following the bloody Guatemalan Civil War, the site became largely inaccessible for decades. From the 1960s until 1996, the forest once again reclaimed its plazas and temples. It was only in 1997 that excavations resumed under the direction of Stephen Houston of Brigham Young University, with 4 field seasons conducted between 1997 and 2004. These campaigns mapped more than 500 structures, revealing the true scale of what had once been a sprawling Maya metropolis. Today, Piedras Negras is a protected archaeological site within the Sierra de Lacandon National Park, preserved both for its historical importance and for the dense rainforest that surrounds it. To reach Piedras Negras, one must travel 4 to 5 hours by boat along the winding course of the Usumacinta River, departing from the small border town of Frontera Corozal, on the frontier between Mexico and Guatemala. There are no highways, no paved access roads. The river is the only route in and the only way out. The river journey first carries us past the great Maya city of Yaxchilán, once one of the dominant powers along Usumacinta. Here, evidence suggests that an ancient Maya suspension bridge, possibly the longest in the ancient world, once spanned the river, linking its opposite banks. We spend several hours exploring the partially restored ruins of Yaxchilán on the Mexican side of the Usumacinta River, a city suspended between jungle and water, stone and shadow. We wander through its dim underground labyrinths, a maze of vaulted chambers and narrow passageways, deliberately conceived as a symbolic entrance into the underworld itself. In the half-light, the stone seems to absorb sound. Each step echoes softly against walls that were designed not merely as architecture, but as cosmology, a ritual descent into Xibalba, the sacred realm beneath the earth. Above us rise the towering temple pyramids, their steep stairways cutting sharply into the sky, their crests still crowned with the remnants of ancient roof cones. Beyond them stretches the vast Acropolis, terraces, courtyards and palaces unfolding in layers, as if the jungle had momentarily loosened its grip to reveal the skeleton of a forgotten kingdom. And yet, this is only the beginning. From Yaxchilan, it would still take another 3 hours by boat to reach Piedras Negras, deeper into the forest, farther from the modern world, and closer to the mysteries that drew us here in the first place. The river winds through pristine rainforest, where white sandy beaches suddenly give way to towering limestone cliffs. Between these vertical walls, the Usumacinta narrows and surges forward in a series of wild, thunderous rapids, its current carving relentlessly through ancient bedrock. Along the way, we stop by a sandy cove, climbing through thick rainforest to reach the crystal-clear waters of a vast cenote, just a few miles from our destination at Piedras Negras. In the intense heat, its transparent waters prove an irresistible temptation, so we dive in for a refreshing swim before resuming again the journey along the Usumacinta River. It is almost a sunset by the time we reach Piedras Negras. Rising from the riverbank, a massive sculpted boulder emerges from the sand, the first unmistakable sign that we have arrived at the ancient city. The fading light only allows for a brief reconnaissance before we push back into the current and establish camp on a sandy beach less than a mile downstream from the archaeological site. For the next 2 days, we will explore the ancient city, documenting its monuments and inscriptions still concealed beneath the forest canopy. So here we are in Piedras Negras. We're just about to leave the campsite in El Porvenir and heading towards the site. We'll take again one of the motorboats. We'll take about 10 minutes to get to the site, and we'll then start our exploration of Piedras Negras in search of a lost Maya Hall of Records. So here we are again on the boat on our way to Piedras Negras. The day is a little bit overcast, but hopefully the sun will come out shortly. Here we are, we're just about to land at Piedras Negras. As you can see here on the beach, a party of rafters have already got here before us. But other than that, we should have the site pretty much all to ourselves. Excited to start this exploration. Here we are finally in Piedras Negras. We just landed here by the Stone of Sacrifice, the great sacrifice rock on the beach. We will soon start exploring the site, making our way towards the Acropolis. The so-called sacrificial rock, as it was named by Theobert Mahler, is the first monument encountered after disembarking on the sandy riverbank near Piedras Negras. Also designated as Altar 6, this massive boulder faces the Usumacinta River, as though deliberately positioned to address those arriving by water. Carved upon its surface are two seated figures confronting one another across what appears to be a cleft, a chasm, or perhaps the stylized entrance to a cavern. The glyphs along the outer band are too abraded to yield any useful information for interpreting the meaning of the scene. Yet the composition itself remains striking. The figure on the left appears to extend a rectangular object toward the figure opposite him, an object resembling a tablet, a codex, or some form of inscribed panel. What exactly is being exchanged? Could this be a symbolic reference to the transfer of knowledge, an allusion perhaps to the hidden records said to have been preserved at this site since time immemorial? If so, the monument may have served as a signpost to those approaching by the river, inviting to continue the journey overland toward a deep shaft or cavern. More conventional interpretations, however, suggest a different reading. The relief may instead depict a dynastic alliance, perhaps a marriage ceremony or political agreement between two allied cities within the realm of Piedras Negras. Passing the sacrificial rock, we turn toward the forest, leaving the riverbank behind as the jungle slowly closes around us. One of the first structures encountered when ascending the steep riverbank toward the Acropolis is a monumental royal tomb, a massive platform concealing 4 vaulted crypts, accessed by a broad ceremonial stairway. When archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania Museum excavated this structure in 1933, they made a startling discovery. Instead of intact burials, they found only charred human remains, burned bones scattered within the chambers, alongside large quantities of jade ornaments and funerary offerings, many of them damaged by fire. The evidence suggests that the tomb had been reopened in antiquity. The remains of former rulers appear to have been ritually exhumed, burned, and then reinterred in a disordered and almost chaotic manner. Archaeologists continue to debate the meaning of this act. Was it an unusual mortuary rite practiced by the ruling elite of Piedras Negras? Or was it truly a political, even revolutionary act? An intentional attempt to desecrate and erase the memory of a previous dynasty. Whatever the explanation, the tomb stands as a silent testimony to a moment of profound upheaval in the city's history. From Tomb U3, we follow a narrow trail that winds southward, in the direction of the city's principal ancient entrance, and toward the vast dry cenote that lies beyond the heart of the site. On the way, we pass beneath a towering ceiba tree, sacred to the ancient Maya, a living axis mundi, its roots reaching into the underworld, its trunk anchored in the human realm, its branches stretching toward the heavens. As we continue south, the jungle begins to close in. The vegetation grows wilder, more untamed. Shoulder-high grasses brushing against us, leaves as large as umbrellas catching the filtered light. At intervals, the dense growth parts to reveal outcrops of pale limestone bedrock, from which the ancient Maya quarried the stone that gave form to temples, palaces, and pyramids. The so-called Turtle Rock is a massive carved outcrop positioned along one of the principal approaches into Piedras Negras. It takes its name from the prominent image of a turtle incised across its weathered surface, an animal closely associated with the ruling dynasty of Piedras Negras, whose kings styled themselves as the Turtle Lords. The turtle itself may carry deeper cosmological meaning. In Maya iconography, it is sometimes associated with the constellation Orion, envisioned as a cosmic turtle bearing the three heartstones that correspond to the three stars of Orion's belt. Alternatively, the imagery may allude to mythical traditions describing the arrival of the ancestors of the Maya peoples upon turtle shells from across the ocean. Whether dynastic emblem, celestial metaphor, or layered mythological narrative, the monument would have stood as a powerful statement to anyone approaching the city from the south. So we have just passed the Turtle Rock. We're continuing here along this trail to the dry cenote, the largest cenote at Piedras Negras, and also one of the largest in all of Guatemala. The path stretches for nearly 2 miles through dense forests. Yet unfortunately, the trail is so overgrown that our guides would spend a good part of a day clearing it of vegetation. Leaving one of our guides behind to clear the path, we decide to turn back toward the heart of the city, leaving the exploration of the cenote for later. Unfortunately, our guide Romario is telling us that the way to the cenote is blocked. So we'll go to the Acropolis first, and then we'll try to open a way towards the dry cenote later in the afternoon. The path back into the city winds between ruined stone mounds and crumbling pyramids, their outlines barely discernible beneath the dense canopy. Eventually, we emerge into a small clearing at the edge of the East Group Plaza, near structure P7, where the monumental architecture of Piedras Negras reveals itself once more. Structure P7 is one of the largest steam baths identified at Piedras Negras, once occupying a prominent position along the East Group Plaza near Pyramid 013. Sweat baths, or temazcales, were typically situated near palace compounds, and at least 8 such complexes are known from the site's ceremonial core. A reconstruction by Tatiana Proskuriakov illustrates how this structure may originally have appeared and how it may have been used. Heated stones generating steam within a low voltage chamber designed to purify both body and spirit. During the 1998-1999 field season, Stephen Houston and his team from Brigham Young University restored the sweat bath, making it functional once again in order to better understand its architectural design and therapeutic properties. As we continue towards the heart of the ancient city, the jungle reveals more remains of its once great monuments. Giant pyramids rise out of the forest floor, their stone steps now swallowed by roots and vines, their summits barely visible through the canopy. Around them lie fallen stelae, half buried and covered in thick moss, the weathered portraits of kings and nobles, slowly dissolving back into the earth. This is part of what archaeologists call the East Group, and from here we continue our way towards the Western Group Plaza and towards Pyramid K5, our next destination. After crossing the East Group, we emerge into the wide plaza of the West Group, a vast clearing at the heart of the ancient city. Along its northern edge rises the massive bulk of Pyramid K5, an imposing structure that dominates the entire space, looming over the plaza with its broad exposed stairway. This is perhaps the most iconic structure at Piedras Negras, admired for its elegant proportions and once elaborate stucco decoration. Excavated by the University of Pennsylvania Museum in 1939, the pyramid revealed a monumental south-facing stairway flanked by 8 colossal stucco masks, depicting what is widely interpreted as a bearded solar deity. One of these masks was found nearly intact and remained exposed for decades, until 2007, when it was carefully reburied to ensure its long-term preservation. A striking reconstruction by Tatiana Proskuryakov illustrates how the structure may once have appeared in its prime. An ornate temple crowned by a soaring roof column rising above the forest canopy. Nowadays, only the foundations of this temple remain. A massive tree has collapsed along one side of the pyramid, miraculously sparing the central stairway. Excavations have revealed multiple construction phases, testifying to centuries of architectural modifications. Near the base of the pyramid lie several fallen stelae, the largest now resting beneath a simple protective shelter. Their frontal surfaces have been almost completely worn away by time and exposure. Yet along their sides, bands of hieroglyphs still survive, carved lines that continue to whisper fragments of the past, still awaiting decipherment after over 1,000 years. A few meters from Pyramid K5, a rusting antique tractor lies half consumed by the forest, one last souvenir of the heavy machinery brought in during the 1930s by the University of Pennsylvania Museum to help clear the site. It stands as a quiet reminder that even the 20th century exploration of Piedras Negras has itself become part of the site's long stratified archaeological record. A narrow trail skirts the eastern flank of the Acropolis, descending steeply toward an exposed limestone outcrop. From this rock face, the ancient Maya quarried the massive blocks that would later be shaped into altars and stelae. They took advantage of the stone's natural horizontal bedding planes, splitting it along its layers to extract large, workable slabs, using little more than just stone hammers and chisels. From the quarry, we retrace our steps towards the West Group Plaza and the Great Acropolis. We have now passed again by Pyramid K5 and heading towards the Acropolis, the main group of structures and the ceremonial center of the site. There, set apart from the surrounding monuments, stands Altar 1, perhaps the most important monument still in situ at Piedras Negras, having escaped removal to museums or private collections. It is also among the most enigmatic. Originally positioned between Pyramid J4 within the Great Acropolis, Altar 1 is a massive circular stone nearly 2 meters in diameter. It was once supported by 3 vertical stone elements representing the 3 heart stones, a powerful reference to Maya creation mythology and to the 3 bright stars of Orion's belt. The carving on its upper surface has been completely abraded by centuries of erosion. Yet remarkably, the inscriptions running along its sides remain well preserved. In 2017, a comprehensive study by Sara Isabel Garcia Gutierrez produced the first complete translation of these lateral texts. What they reveal is extraordinary. The inscription constitutes one of the longest and most complex historical records known from any Maya monument. Although the altar was dedicated in 692 CE by King Kinich Yonal Ak II, the dynastic narrative it recounts stretches far beyond the classic period, reaching deep into mythical antiquity. The earliest date recorded on the monument corresponds to 8 Kib 4 Kshul, equivalent to September 24, 7076 BC in the Gregorian calendar. The specific event associated with this remote date is unknown, as the corresponding text on the altar's upper surface has been lost. Another early date, 1 Ahau 13 Kankin, or March 7, 7056 BC, refers to an event that occurred at a place called the Well of Heaven. This enigmatic toponym may correspond to the ancient name of Piedras Negras itself, Yoquib, the Great Entrance, possibly a reference to the enormous dry cenote located just south of the city's core. Altar 1 is also one of the few Maya monuments to record the canonical creation date of August 11, 3114 BC, the beginning of the present long count cycle. From there, the narrative moves into documented dynastic history. The first historical accession of the Turtle Kings is dated to December 14, 297 CE. Yet, the inscription does not end in the past. Its final recorded date projects forward to 830 CE, the completion of the 10th Baktun, suggesting a prophetic dimension to the monument's conception. The accompanying text names several primordial holy lords of Yoquib, rulers said to have presided over events more than 9,000 years before the classic dynasty emerged. Were these purely mythic ancestors, cosmological placeholders anchoring sacred time? Or do they preserve the memory of an even deeper history now lost to us? And what exactly was the Well of Heaven? Could it refer to a physical place, an entrance into the underworld, located near this very site? And if so, might it connect to the huge dry cenote to the south of the city? And might these remote dates preserve a memory echoed in later traditions of hidden archives concealed beneath the city, a repository of knowledge from a civilization far older than the Maya themselves? Leaving Altar 1 and its many enigmas behind, we begin the ascent toward the massive Acropolis. Almost immediately at its base, a monumental stairway comes into view, constructed from enormous stone blocks, some exceeding 3 meters in length. Flanking the stairway on either side are equally massive megalithic stones, forming the facade of the lowest platform. These are among the largest stone blocks employed at any known Maya site. Their scale, workmanship, and placement at the very foundation of the Acropolis raise important questions. Could they belong to an earlier and still undocumented construction phase, one that may predate the city's florescence during the classic Maya period? If so, the Acropolis we see today may rest upon architectural foundations far older than previously assumed. As you can see here, there are some very large stone blocks at the base of this megalithic stairway. Some of these stones are probably over 2 meters tall. I'm 6'5", so you can get a sense of how tall these stone blocks are. These are some huge stone blocks, very much like you see at the palace in Palenque. And here you have these very large megalithic stairway. Look also at the size of some of these stones. This step alone is probably almost 3 meters long. You have many other steps, each over half a meter tall, going up to the Acropolis. This style of construction is very different from that of typical Maya architecture as you find throughout the site, and may belong to an earlier megalithic stage of construction of Piedras Negras. From this monumental base, the Acropolis unfolds in a sequence of immense terraces, where courtyards and vaulted palaces climb one above the other in a deliberate architectural ascent. Rising nearly 50 meters above the surrounding canopy, it stands among the most imposing acropolises ever built in the Maya world. A reconstruction drawing by Tatiana Proskuriakov offers a glimpse of how this extraordinary complex once appeared. Its terraces crowned with vaulted palaces and soaring rooftops rising above the canopy. A forest of stelae once stood before the Acropolis's massive pyramids, some ranking among the greatest masterpieces of Maya art. Most of these stelae are now on display in the National Museum of Guatemala and other important museums and private collections around the world. Stela 6 originally stood before Pyramid J4. It portrays its patron, Ruler 3, Kinich Yonal Ak II, the same king who also dedicated Altar 1. In the carving, he appears seated within a deep architectural niche, adorned with an elaborate feathered headdress and rich regalia befitting his rank. The monument bears the date 687 CE, anchoring his image firmly within the historical record of the city. Stela 40 is another masterpiece of classic Maya art. Rising nearly 4 meters in height, it depicts Ruler 4, richly attired and kneeling in ritual posture, offering incense above the tomb of his mother. She is shown within a subterranean chamber, adorned in what appears to be Teotihuacan-style costume, a detail that has prompted scholars to consider the possibility of dynastic or symbolic connections with central Mexico. It is a striking and unusual composition in Maya art, underscoring the intimate connection between the realm of the living and the subterranean world below. Other important stelae and monuments removed from the Acropolis are now displayed at major museums and in several private collections around the world, testifying to the splendor of this once great Maya city. We are now also going up the megalithic stairway towards the main Acropolis, where we find a large stela with the figure of a ruler placed right in front of what would have been Pyramid J4, one of the most important pyramids, one of the most important structures at the site. Also around the base of the Acropolis, we find Altar 2. This was a large square altar with 4 supports, and it was also covered with carvings and hieroglyphs, which unfortunately are now very badly eroded and almost completely defaced. Many more stelae and carved monuments once lined the platforms of the Acropolis. Over time, they have fallen or been shattered by looters, leaving behind only a few weathered fragments. We're now heading towards the summit of the Acropolis from Pyramid J4. Wow, here you can see the huge mass of stone and masonry of the great Acropolis. This plaza would have stood right at one of the entrances of the Acropolis, with Pyramid J4 here on my right hand side, and more of the structures here flanking this large plaza. Inside Patio 1, above the platform of Palace J6, archaeologists uncovered what is often considered the most beautiful carved monument at Piedras Negras. Known as a Throne 1, it was commissioned by Ruler 7 to honor 2 of his ancestors, whose profiles appear framed within the open jaws of the Earth Monster, a powerful symbol of the liminal space between life and the underworld. The throne would originally have been painted in vivid red, yellow, and blue, its sculpted forms once dramatically enhanced by color. From this elevated patio, we resume our ascent of the Acropolis, climbing over fallen walls and broken stairways toward its uppermost terraces. We're now going up again on one side of the Acropolis. There are many different rooms and chambers on the side of these large pyramid. We're just flanking Pyramid J4.
We're now standing on one of the upper terraces of the Acropolis, very close to the top. You see many rooms here that have partially collapsed and caved in. This really gives you the feeling of exploring a lost city. Very little has been restored here at Tierras Negras, so you can truly see the effects of 1500 years of abandonment and jungle growth. This structure still has a partially preserved Maya arch. There is another one to its left that has been sealed and blocked up. As we now walk under these 1500 years old Maya arch, still standing in the ruins of Tierras Negras. This is another building that has partially collapsed, but you can still make out many details of the architecture, including several Maya arches or doorways. There are a number of altars here, which suggest this would have been a temple or maybe a palace, a residence for the elite. And again, now coming out on the square, on the plaza of this level of the Acropolis, all surrounded by structures. We can see here multiple construction layers. There are at least 3, possibly more construction layers of this wall, each one built on top of the previous one. Some of these rooms still contain trace of the original stucco. But obviously, any paintings would have long faded away.
After climbing a winding trail through collapsed walls and heaps of rubble, we finally reach the summit of the Acropolis, from which it is possible to appreciate a view of the Usumacinta River down below. On the summit of the Acropolis, Tatiana Proskuriakov chose to be laid to rest in 1985.
We are on the summit of the Acropolis, the highest point in Piedras Negras, the top of this huge artificial mountain, now looking down over the plaza and the ancient city.
After visiting the Acropolis, our attention turns to Pyramid J29, a massive, now completely overgrown structure situated along the northern edge of the Acropolis. On the 1934 map of the ruins, drawn by Tatiana Proskuriakov and Fred Paris, still one of the foundational documents for our understanding of the site, J29 appears as the only major structure on the northern side of the Acropolis, facing what would once have been a large open plaza. Its position is unusual, as it appears to have been built directly against a near vertical cliff face on the steep northern side of the Acropolis. According to researchers Greg and Laura Little, this pyramid may be the entrance to a vast tunnel or cave system extending under much of the site, and which may connect with a legendary Hall of Records. The origins of that legend trace back to the 1930s, when American psychic Edgar Cayce described during trance readings 3 repositories of ancient knowledge said to have been preserved from a lost civilization, one in Atlantis, one near the Sphinx in Egypt, and a third in the Yucatan. In several readings from 1933, Cayce suggested that objects connected to these American Hall of Records were then being uncovered by archaeologists and transported to the United States. At that very moment, the University of Pennsylvania Museum was conducting excavations at Piedras Negras, one of the few major Mesoamerican sites under active investigation by that institution. In his trance readings, Edgar Cayce claimed that a group of Atlantean refugees, led by a figure named Iltar, established a temple in the Yucatan around 10,600 BC. Cayce described this structure as containing a copy of the records preserved in 2 other so-called halls of records, one in Atlantis itself and another in Egypt. According to Cayce's account, this temple was later destroyed during the catastrophic events that he associated with the sinking of Atlantis. He further asserted that its remnants were being uncovered around the time of his trance readings in 1933. Whether coincidence, retrospective interpretation, or imaginative projection, the perceived connection between Cayce's statements and Piedras Negras soon became embedded within alternative historical literature. Yet is it possible that Cayce's controversial readings echo, however distantly, genuine indigenous traditions concerning hidden repositories of sacred knowledge. In 1691, the Bishop Francisco Núñez de la Vega recorded among the Tzeltal Maya the tradition of a great pre-Maya empire, stretching in very ancient times along Usumacinta River. According to the account, the empire had been founded by a great legislator and culture hero called Wotan, who had come from across the sea and founded the city of Nachan, often associated by later scholars with Palenque. Before departing, the narrative continues, Wotan constructed a subterranean vault, described as a house of darkness, in which he deposited the sacred writings and records of his people. In a similar way, the 16th century Spanish chronicler Bernardino de Sahagún recounts how the most remote ancestors of the Nahua peoples arrived from across the sea on ships, bringing with them their sacred books and painted codices, texts which they later carried back to the east upon their departure. Likewise, the friar Juan de Torquemada relates the story of subterranean chambers constructed at a place called Mictlancalco, the house of the underworld, by the great culture hero Quetzalcoatl, who concealed there all his treasures and sacred writings upon his exile from Tula. Leaving Acasi aside, all of these are genuine and native traditions, and all of them connect to the idea of a hidden repository of knowledge, a secret hall of records located somewhere to the east of the Mexican plateau, containing sacred and historical records dating back to the very beginning of Mesoamerican civilization. At the time of the Spanish conquest, vast libraries of painted bark paper codices, known as amoxocallis or houses of writing, existed throughout the lands of the Aztec Empire, the most renowned located in the capital city of Tenochtitlan and in Texcoco. The Library of Texcoco, once called the Athens of America, had been enriched by generations of Acolhua kings and was said to contain as many as 40,000 volumes. All of these perished in the fires of the Inquisition in the years and decades immediately following the Spanish conquest of Mexico. Of the thousands of Maya codices that doubtless existed throughout Yucatan at the time of European contact, only 4 have survived to this day, with a 5th one having only recently been proved authentic after surfacing on the antiquarian market in New York in 1971. One of the most tragic and senseless acts of cultural destruction occurred at Mani in Yucatan in 1562, when Bishop Diego de Landa gathered and burned countless priceless Maya codices in the main square of the town. Could a similar library still exist at Piedras Negras? A repository of ancient codices and manuscripts, hidden since pre-conquest times, still awaiting discovery inside deep subterranean caverns and the labyrinth of ancient Maya tunnels. Beyond the mythology, Pyramid J29 still poses a legitimate architectural question. Why was this important pyramid built in such an isolated position, oriented differently from every other major temple at Piedras Negras? It is in fact the only pyramid at the site that faces north. Its placement is equally unusual. The structure is set directly against a steep limestone escarpment, in an area otherwise occupied only by ancient quarries. This choice of location may not have been accidental. It raises the possibility that the pyramid was deliberately positioned in relation to a natural feature, perhaps a cave or a subterranean chamber embedded deep within the cliff face. In Maya cosmology, caves were understood as entrances to the underworld. while pyramids symbolize sacred mountains rising towards the heavens. If so, J29 may have formed part of a deliberate vertical cosmogram, linking the underworld below with the Acropolis above. Decades of uncontrolled vegetation growth have almost entirely concealed Pyramid J29 from view. Even with a detailed map in hand, it would take hours of cutting and clearing to reopen a path towards the structure and navigate the steep flanks of the Acropolis.
Here we are on our way to the lost pyramid J29 on one side of the Acropolis, walking through these mostly flat terrain, hoping that this path will take us to the opposite side of the Acropolis, where Pyramid J29 is located according to our map. Now the path here to J29 is heavily overgrown, but we hope that Romario here, our guide, will be able to cut a path through this very dense jungle to Pyramid J29. This is what Pyramid J29 looks like on the side of the Acropolis, and now completely overgrown. We are here now on one side of the Acropolis, trying to locate Pyramid J29, which our map here shows should be right in front, right ahead of us. As we're climbing up the side of Pyramid J29, you see a lot of natural bedrock. It's as if the pyramid and this whole side of the Acropolis was built directly on top of bedrock. Well, it looks like after a lot of wandering around and back and forth, we may have found Pyramid J29. You see some stone walls here of what was probably one of the terraces of the pyramid, and lots of fallen stones. Here we are finally at the very summit of Pyramid J29, where there seems to be a small ruined temple. You can see the entrances up there, even though it's almost completely overgrown. Yeah, so this was certainly the temple of Pyramid J29. And up above will be the Great Acropolis. Here you can see more details of the small temple on top of Pyramid J29 with these still standing walls. And right behind us is the Great Acropolis and a huge exposed limestone cliff face. So here, from where we're standing on the top of Pyramid J29, you can see part of the cliff face that forms this side of the Acropolis. So this could be an ideal location for a cave or a tunnel system, which may be the reason why this Pyramid J29 was built on this particular side of the Acropolis, directly connected to the natural bedrock and perhaps to a natural cave. Here is a view of the large cliff face right behind Pyramid J29. where we can also see some huge fallen boulders. Here, our guide Ernesto is showing us the precise orientation of this pyramid. It's almost exactly oriented north-south, a very precise orientation here towards the north. Here our guide Romario is pointing to some large stones that appear to have carvings. It could be hieroglyphs here on top of Pyramid J29, one of the proposed locations for Casi's Hall of Records here at Piedras Negras, as it is quite literally overshadowed by the Acropolis on top. Here is our guide Romario trying to see if there is any hidden passageway inside the summit of Pyramid J29. And all around at the base of the Acropolis, you can see more of these limestone cliff faces with some huge boulders that clearly detached from the cliff face above. This is very similar to the quarry, which is probably only a couple hundred meters from here.
Excavations conducted in 1936 by the University of Pennsylvania Museum revealed an unusual temple structure crowning Pyramid J29. Archaeologists described it as a hybrid composition, combining local architectural traditions with stylistic elements characteristic of the Petén region. In the expedition's reconstruction drawings, the superstructure appears to contain an atypical T-shaped interior chamber. Most striking is the massive rear wall, whose extraordinary thickness suggests it was designed to support a substantial architectural element, perhaps an ornamental roof comb or tower rising above the temple.
Well, now enjoying a little break by the Maya Quarry after visiting Pyramid J29. We're then headed towards Pyramid O13, which is another one of the suspected locations of a hidden tunnel system underneath Piedras Negras that may connect with Pyramid K5 on the Acropolis and Pyramid J29.
With our examination of Pyramid J29 complete, we descend from the northern flank of the Acropolis and make our way back towards the East Group, seeking another prominent structure identified on the 1934 map as O13. A steep stairway links the West Group Plaza at the foot of the Acropolis with the expansive East Group Plaza below, set at a significantly lower level. The East Group contains several altars, among which are altars 3 and 4.
Inside the East Group, we have altar 3, which is another rectangular altar with 4 supporting stones. All the decorations and the carvings have since long gone.
Altar 4 is particularly intriguing because of its unusual shape, which resembles a jaguar's paw. Whether this form was intentional or the result of centuries of erosion remains uncertain, as the monument's upper surface and sides have been completely worn smooth, leaving no visible traces of carving. Leaving Altar 4 behind, we move once more through thick undergrowth toward Pyramid O13, positioned along the eastern flank of the Great Plaza. Like Pyramid J29, O13 was constructed directly against the steep face of a large limestone outcrop. This natural formation extends in a broad U-shape, ultimately connecting with the eastern flank of the Acropolis. Pyramid O13 was once among the most important monuments at Piedras Negras. Its prominence is evident not only in its imposing scale and broad ceremonial stairway, but also in the large number of stelae and carved monuments that once stood in the plaza before it. Convinced by certain inscriptions that the pyramid concealed a royal burial, the University of Pennsylvania Museum expedition excavated deep trenches and tunnels within the structure. However, the instability of the superstructure and continuous collapses of rubble ultimately forced the abandonment of the work. Originally, at least 10 stelae stood before O13, commemorating rulers 5, 6, and 7, veritable masterpieces of ancient Maya art, most of which are now housed in the National Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology in Guatemala City. Among the most extraordinary discoveries associated with this pyramid was a sculptural relief panel known as Panel 3, now displayed at the National Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. Widely regarded as one of the finest achievements of classic Maya art, the panel depicts a royal court scene rendered with remarkable spatial depth, despite being carved in bas relief only a few centimeters thick. Commissioned by Ruler 7, the monument commemorates the royal jubilee of his father, Ruler 4, marking the completion of a Katun, or 20-year calendrical cycle. The king is shown seated upon a jaguar skin throne with an elaborate pavilion, likely representing the royal palace itself, surrounded by courtiers and emissaries from the neighboring city of Yaxchilan. Two of the accompanying figures bear intriguing titles, often translated as sages and librarians, terms that have prompted speculation about the existence of royal archives or repositories of knowledge associated with the palace complex. The monument was carved by Ruler 7 to represent the royal jubilee of his father, Ruler 4, which marked the end of a Katun or cycle of the Maya calendar. The inscription further records the death of Ruler 4 in 757 CE, his burial within Pyramid O13, and the reopening of his tomb by Ruler 7 in 782 CE. All of these strongly suggest that O13 contains funerary chambers, but the architectural context raises an additional question. Set against the limestone formation, could the pyramid also communicate with natural cavities within the rock itself? In several areas near the base of the structure, one can feel a pronounced current of cold air streaming from collapsed openings, an indication that significant voids may still exist beneath or behind the pyramid.
Here, our guide Ernesto is showing us with a lit cigarette how air is coming out, is gushing forth from this small hole at the base of Pyramid O13, which suggests that this hole may be connected to a larger cave or tunnel system that creates an air draft.
Researchers Greg and Laura Little have proposed that such cavities might connect O13 with pyramids K15 and J29 by means of underground tunnels. Intriguingly, these three pyramids form a triangular configuration across the site. Whether coincidental or deliberate, such an arrangement inevitably recalls the three heartstones of Maya creation mythology, often associated with the three stars of Orion's belt.
Now, after visiting the East Group and Pyramid O13, we're headed towards the South Group, which may be one of the earliest pre-classic groups of structures at the site, and is also notable for its astronomical orientations. We are passing by Pyramid R16 here, which is heavily overgrown on our right-hand side. And we will then continue towards the central plaza of the South Group and Pyramid R3 and R4, which are astronomically aligned towards the Orion Belt, the Orion constellation.
Before reaching the South Group proper, we enter a ball court, one of at least 3 known at Piedras Negras. Its elongated eye-shaped layout still clearly discernible despite centuries of abandonment. The steep lateral walls once supported stone rings through which players sought to propel the heavy rubber ball during the ritual Mesoamerican ball game, a performance that was at once athletic contest, political theater, and cosmological drama. Across from the ball court, we enter the South Group, perhaps the earliest architectural complex at Piedras Negras, with construction phases that may extend back into the pre-classic period. The South Group forms an almost square plaza, enclosed on all sides by pyramids and raised platforms. Though now heavily dilapidated, these structures preserve intriguing orientation patterns. One pyramid platform in particular has been interpreted by researchers Greg and Laura Little as aligning with the heliacal rise of Orion's belt on August 14, 3114 BC, the mythic Maya creation date marking the beginning of the present long count cycle. Another structure on the opposite side of the plaza, oriented toward the west, has been proposed to correspond symbolically with the setting of Orion on December 21, 2012 CE, the completion of the 13th Baktun of the Maya calendar. Whether these alignments are intentional astronomical markers or later interpretative projections remains debated. Yet, the recurrence of Orion symbolism, already encountered in the 3 Hearthstones of creation, adds another layer to the city's cosmological complexity. Several broken stelae lie before the pyramids of the South Group, their carved faces worn smooth by centuries of erosion. With the exploration of the South Group, our survey of the main ceremonial core draws to a close.
We have now concluded our visit of the main ceremonial core of Piedras Negras, and we will take a short break by the river, by the Stone of Sacrifice, before trying again to find the dry cenote. Our guide Romario went ahead trying to open a path towards the dry cenote, so we really hope we can make it there before sunset.
We return briefly to the river, to the boats, to lunch, and to the cool relief of the Usumacinta's waters. But the true objective of this expedition still lies ahead. The vast dry cenote to the south awaits our return.
So after a good lunch, we're now ready to continue on our exploration towards the dry cenote.
The trail to the dry cenote leads us once again past the Turtle Petroglyph south of the city. From there, our guides have reopened a narrow path ascending steeply into the hills, running parallel to the course of the Usumacinta River. The approach is grueling. We climb through dense, nearly impenetrable vegetation across rugged terrain where remnants of ancient stone terraces and overgrown mounds still emerged from beneath the forest floor. The cenote's remoteness and the relentless growth of the rainforest help explain why it was only discovered in 1998. Then suddenly the forest opens. Standing at the rim, we're confronted with an astonishing spectacle. An immense, nearly vertical shaft, approximately 120 meters in diameter and perhaps more than 200 meters deep. It may well be the largest known dry cenote in Mesoamerica. Unlike the water-filled cenotes of the Yucatan, formed by the gradual dissolution and collapse of porous limestone, this vast sinkhole appears to have originated from the collapse of an enormous subterranean cavity. A smaller adjacent depression to the west reinforces the impression that significant voids exist beneath the surface. The existence of such cavities raises important geological and archaeological questions. Could this cenote correspond to the Well of Heaven mentioned in several inscriptions from Piedras Negras, a mythic location associated with the remote date of 7076 BC and the canonical Maya creation date of 3114 BC? And might this immense shaft also illuminate the ancient name of the city, Yoquib, the Great Entrance, perhaps signifying an entrance into the underworld? If substantial subterranean chambers exist also beneath the urban core, they may help explain why certain pyramids, J29, O13, and K5, were constructed directly against limestone formations in direct connection with these natural cavities. Recent translations of Altar 1, combined with possible astronomical orientations in the South Group, suggest that the site's origins may reach far deeper into the mythical past than previously assumed. Whether these references are symbolic, cosmological, or rooted in historical memory remains an open question. Yet the geological reality of vast underground voids makes one conclusion unavoidable. There is far more beneath this city than is visible at the surface. Only systematic investigation, particularly beneath the Acropolis and around Pyramid J29, will determine whether a large cave system truly extends beneath the site. Non-invasive methods such as seismic noise tomography and electrical resistivity surveys could help map subsurface voids and clarify the complex construction history of the Acropolis without disturbing the structures themselves. And although technically challenging due to its immense depth, future exploration of the dry cenote may yield critical insight into how the ancient Maya understood and ritually engaged with these liminal spaces, thresholds between the world of the living and the underworld below. Yet for now, the cenote remains silent. Its depths still unexplored. Its secrets waiting in darkness.
So here we are again, finally out of the jungle at the end of an amazing exploration of Piedras Negras, about to head back to camp. This was an incredible trip, an incredible adventure. We could find megalithic remains of what may be an earlier stage of construction here at Piedras Negras, as well as evidence that may confirm the existence of a large cave system, or maybe even tunnels underneath the site, in the form of connected pyramids, pyramids connected by tunnels, and a huge dry cenote that may be the entrance, the access to a yet unexplored cave system underneath the site. We also explored some of the astronomical alignments of Piedras Negras, as well as the orientation of its structures towards significant calendar dates, many of which have been memorialized on Altar 1, which contains some of the earliest Maya dates on record, as well as the famous date of August 14, 3114, marking the beginning of the Maya calendar and its supposed end on December 21st, 2012. So a very fascinating trip overall. We're coming back with lots of materials, lots of footage and useful insights, hopefully for the planning of a future expedition and for the realization of more research here at Piedras Negras, particularly focused on the underground tunnels and the underground aspects of the site.
The return journey from Piedras Negras proved far more perilous than our arrival. As we crossed a particularly treacherous stretch of rapids, the boat struck a submerged rock. The engine failed instantly, and we began spinning uncontrollably in the churning current, carried downstream toward jagged limestone outcrops. With the propeller shattered and the current pulling us dangerously close to the rocks, our captain fought to regain control. Steering only with the rudder and the force of the stream, he managed to guide the disabled boat into a narrow protected cove along the riverbank.
So it looks like the propeller broke, so they're gonna try to fix it. Hopefully we'll be able to go through the rapids.
There, working against time and the raging current, he replaced the broken propeller and coaxed the engine back to life. little bit wet, but we made it through the rapids. It would take several more hours before we finally returned to the small border town of Frontera Corozal and to the familiarity of paved roads and electric lights. But the jungle behind us remains unchanged, as it has for centuries since the ancient city fell silent. For now, Piedras Negras keeps its secrets. Its towering acropolis, its buried tombs, and the vasta cenote to the south remain largely unexplored, silent witnesses to a history that may reach far deeper than we yet understand. In its isolation along Usumacinta, it stands as one of the last true frontiers of Maya research. And beneath its stones, the question still lingers. What lies hidden below? Could there truly exist beneath these weathered ruins a hidden archive, an ancient repository of knowledge, long forgotten and awaiting discovery?